65 years ago, Lowell Thomas, the well-known CBS reporter, and his son Lowell Thomas Jr. traveled to Tibet in August 1949. After traveling through Sikkim, they spent about 2 weeks inside Tibet. At that time, His Holiness, the 14th Dalai Lama, was only about 15 years old. It was a very critical time in Tibet. The Communist Party was winning power in China. Mao Zedong had already threatened Tibet of liberation. At the same time, the Tibetan government was very restrictive in allowing foreigners to enter Tibet. But Lowell Thomas and his son, Lowell Thomas Jr., were cleared to enter Tibet. Anne Donaghy, daughter of Lowell Thomas Jr., shared her thoughts on the reasons for the Tibetan government allowing her father and grandfather to visit Tibet without much problem.
My grandfather had always wanted to go to Tibet. And when he did receive the permission and the invitation from His Holiness the Dalai Lama, he realized that it was no merit of his, but it was because His Holiness and his advisors knew that Communist China was coming. And that this might be one way to get the word out to the rest of the world. Where Tibet stood and the help that Tibet needed. And so they were given that invitation, and they really considered it a mission, I think. When they came back, my father wrote 2 books, and he toured with the film that he took there. And many, many people saw that film.
In 1949, when Lowell Thomas Sr. and Jr. visited Tibet, His Holiness the Dalai Lama had not assumed full political and religious responsibility of Tibet. However, a new office called Tibet's Foreign Affairs Bureau was established with Liu Sha and Surkang as the official responsible. Tendon Tenzin Namgyel, head of RFA Tibetan Language Service, thinks Lowell Thomas and his son were allowed to Tibet so that they could tell the story of critical situation in Tibet at that time to outside world and win help particularly from the United States.
At the time of their visit, the Foreign Affairs Bureau of the Tibetan government was headed by Liu Sha and Sukang. And I believe Tsebun Shagaba had a lot to do in making the Thomases' visit possible. It was at a critical time for Tibet, with the Chinese communists already in full control of China. And although the Tibetan government took many measures to preserve Tibet's independence, which includes this rather late initiative, they could not keep up with global changes all around. While many new countries were gaining freedom, Tibet, specifically Tibetan society, was unprepared and unable to do so. These are the unfortunate facts of history, and this last visit by 2 Americans to a free Tibet is part of that story. And if we believe that we learn from history, then this story is important for all who care about the future of Tibet.
What the Tibetan government hoped and wished did not happen. After their return to the United States, Lowell Thomas Jr. was called to the White House and met President Harry Truman on November 11, 1949. He reported in detail about the situation in Tibet. The president took great interest on Tibet, but he made no commitment to help Tibet. However, Lowell Thomas Sr. and Jr. on their part published books, produced films, and toured different places in US to inform about Tibet's situation and the danger of Communist China's invasion of Tibet. John Ashley, head of the Department of Archives and Special Collection of Marist College in Poughkeepsie, New York, had this to share about the accomplishments of Lowell Thomas Sr. and Jr., who had a close connection with Marist College.
Yeah, it's very interesting. There's really, I guess, two outcomes to that. The Thomas has really raised awareness to what was happening in Tibet, raised the American consciousness to what was happening in Tibet. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, they didn't have the same success with the American government. You know, President Truman did not want to get involved. He was concerned that was going to put the U.S. in a very difficult situation, so the U.S. government really did very little. However, in all the films and lectures that Lowell Thomas Sr. and Lowell Thomas Jr. did, which Lowell Thomas Jr. has continued throughout his life, even to a few years ago, I think has helped really start the, back in the 50s, helped start the Free Tibet movement in the U.S. So there was not the outcome that the Thomases were hoping for, but they at least did raise American consciousness to what was happening in Tibet in 1949 and onward.
After their return to the United States from Tibet, both father and son not only educated the American public about Tibet, they remained in contact with His Holiness the Dalai Lama. After the arrival of Dalai Lama to India, Lowell Thomas met him in Dharamsala, India. When His Holiness visited US, they met him in New York. And Donaki, daughter of Lowell Thomas Jr., also met His Holiness the Dalai Lama. Lowell Thomas Sr. was born in Ohio in 1892 and died at the age of 89 at his home in Paulding in Dutchess County, New York in 1981. When he was alive, Lowell Thomas became very close with the Marist College, located close to his home in Paulding. This connection started when Lowell Thomas Sr. was working at CBS. John Ashley of Marist College has this to say about this special connection between Marist College and Lowell Thomas.
Yeah, it's a little unusual because Thomas, he didn't go here as a student, he didn't teach here, but he became very friendly with the college during the 1970s when he was working for CBS. Marist students were interning at CBS, and he made a connection with one of the Marist professors and was very impressed with the communications program. Marist was very forward-thinking at the time, and it's still our largest department. So that's how he made the connection with Marist College, and he wanted his materials, his papers, to go to stay in the Hudson Valley, because he lived in Dutchess County, New York, for over 50 years, and he really considered the Hudson Valley his home. So he wanted his the bulk of his research, personal papers, to stay here.
As explained by John Ashley, both Lowell Thomas Sr. and Jr. neither studied as a student nor worked as a teacher in this college, but developed a special connection. To keep this special link alive, the communication department of this college was named as Lowell Thomas Communication Center. On 20th June 2014, Marist College organized a special exhibition of artifacts, photos, and films collected by Lowell Thomas at the Communication Center. Those artifacts are Tibetan flags, white and red scarves given by the Dalai Lama, Tibetan horn and shore game materials, documents, and so on. Thousands of photos and films collected by Lowell Thomas are not only archived in their original form at the college, but also digitized and archived online. John Ashley, the head of the Department of Archive and special collection of this college explain their efforts to maintain an archive of collections of Lowell Thomas online for easy access.
Well, we find the most effective way to do that now is online. So we're trying to digitize as much as we can. So all the photos in the collection, obviously including the Tibet images, are available online. So if you go to library.meristudy.edu/archives, you can actually see all the images through the Lowell Thomas Papers Finding Aid, or you can do a search off of that page. All the objects from the Tibet part of the collection are online as well. And our goal is to continue to do that. It's a very slow process, unfortunately, for us. We don't have a big staff, but we're getting as much grant funding as we can to try to speed up that our mission to make as much available online as possible. And I think that's saved particularly international researchers a lot of time, that they're able to actually look and see specifically what we have online. They don't have to worry about the travel and expense of getting them Marist. And we do a lot of long distance work with researchers as well.
Okay. Anne Dorjee, daughter of Lowell Thomas Jr., had also made plans to organize the excellent photos taken by her father and grandfather in 2 exhibitions in collaboration with the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives in Dharamsala.
Well, I met Geshe Lakdor, who is the head of the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives in Dharamsala, and I showed him, I had my iPad with me, which is easy for travel, and I had some of my father's photos on my iPad, and I showed them to him. And we talked about an exhibit, a permanent exhibit there at the Library of Tibetan Works and Archives. And he talked also about how then perhaps in the future there could be a traveling exhibit through India and then other parts of the world of these photos so that everyone could see them. They will be large size, on the walls, so they're absolutely beautiful photos, mostly of people. My father was a very gifted photographer, it turns out, and he has most of the photos are of people, of faces, close up of people about their daily life. No one's posed, they're right there in their daily life, and so we're hoping by next fall, that would be September or October of 2015, that this exhibit will be ready.
Anne Dorjee's father, Lowell Thomas Jr., is 91 and lives in Anchorage, Alaska. He was the Lieutenant Governor of the state of Alaska. In 2005, he was bestowed the International Campaign for Tibet's Light of Truth Award. Both Lowell Thomas Sr. and Jr. helped Tibetan refugees through the American Emergency Committee for Tibetan Refugees. I'm Karma Dorjee, reporting from Marist College, Poughkeepsie, New York. Pasan Thundeng is our cameraman and technician.
So